Let's take a trip down memory lane. Activate the time machine and take me back to 2005. Okay, time machine, you got it right, but you went a little bit too far. People have feelings. Before the current success of the Astros, and before the Astros had that long playoff drought, and before the Astros even decided to move to the AL, they were in a constant battle with their division rivals, the St. Louis Cardinals. Yep, the St. Louis Cardinals, who were responsible for this. One of the only home runs that can leave a stamp in history, of which the team that hit the home run lost the series. Throughout the early 2000s, the Astros found themselves in the middle of the payroll race of all MLB teams, and it was mainly filled by three players: Jeff Bagwell, Lance Berkman, and Roger Clemens. And honestly, when you're talking about their best players of the year 2005, you are talking about some old players. Jeff Bagwell was 37. Craig Biggio was 39, Roger Clemens was 42, and Andy Pettitte was 33. The Astros that year didn't have a single hitter to bat either at 300 or above it. However, a lot of their hitters had a crazy good on-base percentage. And even though no one batted 300 or above, everyone on the starting lineup had either 100 or more hits for that season, except for one player, Chris Burke. Another weird fact, pretty much every starter on that Astros team either found themselves retiring shortly after that season, or just found themselves getting significantly worse throughout the remaining years of their career, pretty much starting immediately after the 2005 season. Willie Tavares found himself making his last MLB appearance at the age of just 28. Craig Biggio retired just 2 years later. Chris Burke found himself stopping his career at age 29. Jason Lane retired 2 years later. Brad Ausmus decided to retire 5 years later, but pretty much every season afterwards wasn't that great. Jeff Bagwell retired that year. Roger Clemens stopped playing 2 years after the 2005 season. And Ezekiel Estacio only played 2 total seasons in the MLB, including the 2005 one. He stopped playing in 2006. The only players that continued to play at a high efficiency or at the same current level that they were from the 2005 season was Lance Berkman, Wandy Rodriguez, and Roy Oswalt. In 2005, the Astros had to start their season without arguably their best player, Lance Berkman. He had a knee surgery that offseason that would put him out for a full month of this next season. And as we all know, the beginning of that season was devastating. It was bad. They were basically a professional retirement home at that point. Craig Biggio was 39 years old and pitchers were still plunking him with fastballs. Bunch of assholes. But I mean, it did lead to Craig Biggio breaking the record for hit by pitch in a career. And if you're looking for what that gets you, look no further than this video. Do you want to have a lifetime supply of bandages? Do you want to have a high on-base percentage? Do you want to make the Hall of Fame? Well, just get hit by a bunch of pitches in the MLB. Yes, Craig Biggio, because he has that record, gets a lifetime supply of Band-Aids. The Astros started the season at 15-30 and the city of Houston was depressed. Hey, at least they had the Rockets led by T-Mac and Yao Ming to look forward to, right? Oh yeah, injuries. Luckily for Houston though, the Astros started to pick up some steam. After falling to their longest losing streak of that season, they bounced back with a 5-1 win against division rivals Chicago Cubs, and then lost to the Milwaukee Brewers. And then they won 2 games in a row, and then got destroyed 0-9 by the Cincinnati Reds. You ever get that feeling that you took a couple steps forward, but you never really made any progress? You know, kind of like the Yankees this past decade? Yeah, that's how Houston was feeling. Then, the month of June came around. This might be a reach, but June, I'll have you know, is home to one of the most not famous holidays of the year, Asteroid Day. Asteroids reside in space. The Astros were named after the Astrodome, which is a descendant of a space term. Houston is home to NASA. The Astros garnered the strength of Asteroid Day. Case closed. The Astros would go on in June to have a record of 16-9-1. Yes, they had a tie game with the Cincinnati Reds. They carried on that strength in July and went 9-2 right up to the All-Star break. The Astros went 25-11 over the previous month and a half leading up to the All-Star break, which was bringing some hope to the civilians of Houston. On July 19th, the Astros had a doubleheader against the Cincinnati Reds. You are hearing that team name a lot, and it's because they were in the same division, but they had a doubleheader against them, and guess what? On July 19th, they finally broke 500 and then above 500. They continued their winning ways after the All-Star break, going 45-30 to finish off the season. The retirement home made a statement. The Astros were set to take on the Atlanta Braves led by Chipper Jones and Andrew Jones. The Atlanta Braves also had the 2005 version of Juan Soto, Jeff Francoeur. He was only 21. The Astros ended up taking that series 3-1 to move on to the NLCS. It's the NLCS. And the Astros have to take on their division rival, the 100-win St. Louis Cardinals, led by a 25-year-old machine, Albert Pujols, who was the MVP that season. He was an absolute monster at an extremely young age. The series was looking great for the Astros, who took a commanding 3-1 lead against the St. Louis Cardinals. Brad Lidge was on a 3-save streak at the time, and then, as we all know, this happened. Brad Lidge was never the same again. But the Astros went on to defeat the Cardinals in the very next game 5-1, which booked their ticket to the World Series. And they got swept. The end. I feel that the Albert Pujols home run is more notable and remembered than the actual World Series itself. It has got to suck to be a White Sox fan. You win your first World Series since 1917, so technically, your first World Series, period. And you do it in sweeping fashion, and no one cares. The 2005 Astros were a team of soon retirees, baseball role players, and players who would never play that same type of baseball ever again. There you have it, the 2005 Misfits. Now this part, just to throw it at the end of the video, if you enjoyed that video, obviously you can go ahead and leave me a like on this video because it helps a lot. But also I posted a little teaser hint on my YouTube community page hinting at this video, and a lot of people thought I was just going to talk about how the Astros choked the World Series away and things like that, but that is not the case. Obviously it was a choke, but I wanted to talk about the deeper meaning behind it. Was the slow start, the injury that happened to Lance Berkman, the comeback in the second half of the season, and the fact that the players on that team were just, I like to call it misfits. Obviously they were good baseball players, but you have guys like Adam Everett, Chris Burke, guys on that team that you don't remember. And you only remember them if somebody brings up a name. And then in some cases, in some instances, you might hear that name and you might be like, oh, that sounds familiar. So you have to look it up, and then you go, oh yeah, I remember that player. So they were filled with guys like that. And outside of Jeff Bagwell, Lance Berkman, and Craig Biggio, who two of those three players were out of the league soon after this season because they were getting really old, you just don't really remember that many other players from that team. Obviously, they had a good pitching staff and some notable pitchers. But man, the starting lineup, as far as hitters go, you have some very forgettable names in there. I've never forgot them because obviously I'm a fan of the Astros, but I can see as an outsider looking in, these are names that you probably would get caught in your brain and you have to look them up real quick. But yeah, that's it for this video. I'm out.